This is Greg Pass with the Americans in Wartime Museum. Today's date is June the 6th, 2015, and I'm conducting an interview with Michael Hubiack at the Mid-Atlantic Air Museum in Pennsylvania. Sir, would you please give us your full name, when you were born, and where you were born?
Michael Hubiack, born 4 Phillips Street, Buttonwood, Wilkes-Barre, Pennsylvania.
And what war did you participate in?
World War II.
Do you have any other military veterans in your family?
Yeah. I had a cousin that lived with us. He's dead now. He was in the artillery. And I had a brother younger than me that was in the infantry. I think he was in the 8th Infantry Division. That's all.
And do you remember where you were when you heard about the attack on Pearl Harbor?
Yeah, I was working in the Betsy Ross restaurant on Public Square in Wilkes-Barre.
And how did it make you feel when you heard about the Japanese attack?
Yeah, nothing much. Everybody was just wondering what happened, that's all.
And how did you end up entering into military service?
No, I didn't join up. I was drafted, but I was in high school then yet. And that was, I think it was on a Sunday. And I was working till 11 o'clock, I think, at night, or 10 o'clock, behind the soda fountain. So then I was still a student in my 12th year in high school. And I came home from work. And the next day I went to school. I was student in high school. So then I went to school, and nothing continued until they drafted me. I was drafted, and but I was in high school yet, and they took me out. I graduated in June of '42 from high school. And I was drafted on June. I don't know, was it September or something? Or somewhere around there. I was drafted into the Army. I think it was on my discharge paper, it's in there.
And what was your military occupational specialty?
Well, I had to go to New Cumberland, where all the draftees go in Pennsylvania at that time. I was there a couple of days. Most of it was all the students that graduated from high school with me that was in there, because it was the first 18-year-old draft. So we come in there, and then we got measured up and got clothed up, dressed up and everything, and all of a sudden they said, we're going out. We got in the train, and it loaded up, it was a long train, and we ended up down in Camp Wheeler, Georgia. We're down there in basic training for 13 weeks. After 13 weeks of training, we were loaded up on a train again, and we brought up to Pennsylvania, Camp Shenango, or I think it was near Erie, Pennsylvania. I don't know, was it for over a night or something? Then from there we was transferred down to Newport News, camp was that? I think it was Camp Marshall Leote or Camp Patrick Henry. Camp Patrick Henry was down there. It was just a swamp was built with plywood and tar paper around it in the swamp area. I don't know, we were there for a couple of days. Then we were shipped out, I think it was in Norfolk. We came out of the camp and went to Norfolk, and then we went on the USS Mariposa. From there we went from Virginia to Casablanca in Africa. Took us 8 days to get across the ocean, zigzagging back and forth, and ended up in Casablanca, ended up in the French Foreign Legion camp. I think we slept there for 2 days. Then we were put on a train and we went up, I think we went up like through French Morocco, Spanish Morocco, up to near the Mediterranean Ocean, into Oran and then Algiers. Or Oran. And I was assigned to a camp, a replacement camp. I don't know how long we just had to sleep in pup tents on the ground. Then the next thing you know, we were back on the train and getting assigned to another camp out in the desert. And I was assigned to the, I think it was the 1st Infantry Division. From there we went up to near the Mediterranean Sea. I think that was in Oran. We come up there, and they already ended up the war in Africa. We were shipped. They went and made the invasion of Sicily, and we went in as replacements on the landing craft into Sicily. By the time we got there, the war in Sicily was over, and we were brought back to a camp just outside of an orange grove, or a lemon grove it was. And we laid out on the ground and slept overnight there. And then, I don't know, we stayed there for a day or two. We were loaded in trucks and taken to, I think it was Palermo, Sicily. From Palermo, Sicily, we loaded up on a boat that was coming, an Indian boat coming from India to England. It had English officers and Indian sailors. And we come all the way over to, I think it was in the night we had to get on the boat, and we went through the Rock of Gibraltar and up the Atlantic Ocean right into England. And then they distributed to Quonset huts where we were stationed in until we got decided what they decided they were going to do. That's all I could remember there. Then we went to basic training. We went through it. We were doing work going up into boats, landing craft, go out in the Mediterranean Sea, make a practice run into invasion into England. Then they took us out through another one. What was that? I forget what bivouac area, and we had to do it from the other side of England, like from the Atlantic side. We had to do the invasion there, practice invasion. I don't know how long it lasted, but then we got shipped back to the camp down in southern England. Got there, and they loaded us up on a boat, and we went out in the Mediterranean Sea, and that's when we found out that, in between that, we had to go out and stand inspection out in the field. Winston Churchill come down and inspect us one day. Montgomery come down and inspect us one day. General Eisenhower come down and inspected us one day. General Patton come down and inspected generals. So everybody knew, being that they were all coming around, that something was coming up. So they took us back to the camp, and we were there for, I don't know how long, a couple of days. And then they loaded us up in the trucks, and we come down Weymouth. I think it was Weymouth in England, southern England. And we loaded up on already we were getting loaded up on the boat. A pretty big transportation bus, truck, our ship. And we pulled out in the ocean. And we were waiting for orders. And then finally, when it came out, we found out we were going to make the invasion of France. So we had to go out on the English Channel. And the first thing you know, it was in the morning, I think it was after 4 o'clock, they start loading us down from the ship on these rope ladders into the landing craft. It was dark, so we didn't know it. So we were going around, and then got the landing craft, we started going around in circles, and it started getting light already. And that's when you could see how many other ships were in the channel all over, English Channel. Right? And other big transports were unloading troops. They were climbing down in there, and we were riding around. It was dark. But as the weather started clearing up, we could see the haze on the ocean lifting up, and we could see the beach. It was a beautiful beach. Obstacles in it, but the beach was pretty long. We invaded at, it was high tide. No, it wasn't. It was low tide. It was low tide because there was a lot of beach to run down. So they straightened all the landing craft together instead of going around and around until they get a range. They straightened them all out, and that's when we went in to make the invasion on the beach. We jumped past the obstacles that was in the beach, and we ran up the beach. There was no fire until we got farther up on the beach. We got farther up on the beach, already the Germans start machine gun shooting down on us. The beach got smaller, and we were up against, on the beach, if you know along the ocean, the beach is sandy and then it's gravel. And we had to lay in back of that gravel while the Germans were shooting at us with it was artillery and machine guns. The Germans were shooting with machine guns at us, and more troops started coming. The tide come up. I was laying in the tide against the gravel with my legs in the water, and my head was on the gravel. The sergeant started hollering, "Set up the mortar." I was on a 60-millimeter mortar. I had no training on the mortar, but I had what the hell was it? 60-millimeter mortar, and I was made a assistant gunner. My sergeant was Sergeant Biggis. So we got into action and we started firing. I know I had a pack of 60-millimeter mortars, shells. I used them up and I got another pack from the ammunition carrier and I started firing. When they artillery hit our area. I know the gunner was laid over that side, I laid over here, and the sergeant was up in front of us, higher on the gravel, so he was directing the fire. So he directed the fire, we went up, and the artillery hit us and knocked us out. Everybody was knocked. I was wounded, the gunner was wounded, the sergeant was wounded, the ammunition carriers were wounded as far as I could see. And the artillery, when it hit us, that's when we all got hurt. I was laying over on my side, I was bleeding. I took my helmet, I put it under my head, I looked, I had blood coming in the helmet. So they started hollering, medic, medic, medic. The medic come over, he bandaged up, put my hand in the sling, bandaged it up, put a bandage on my head, and put a bandage across my rear on the back because the shrapnel ripped open right above my ear, my rear. What the hell am I talking about? I've been telling this story right along, so that's why I'm getting tongue-tied. And he put a bandage on me, and he said, lay there, the medic will come and pick you up. So I lay there for a while, and I started bleeding again. And I started hollering medics, and he come in and put another bandage on me. He said, the Navy medic is going to come and pick you up. So the Navy medic come up after. He picked me up and carried me out with a sailor out to the big ship out in the channel. And they lifted me up with a crane and put me on the ship. And they took me down, the sailor took me down and changed my bandages. And that was it. The next day, the ship went back to England with all the men that they could put on wounded over there. And that's when I think I was put in Taunton, England, and they started bandaging me up and cleaning me up. They put a bandage on my head. I still got a little shrapnel in it. And they put a bandage on my arm. I lost my radial nerve. And my hand was like a flipper down on it. And I was laying there, and I think I laid there, was it 2 months. And they started telling me that they were sewing me up, but every time they sewed me up, instead of them letting me lay there, they tried to make me sit up, and the stitches would pull apart. So then, when I got to Taunton, England, that's when they sewed me up there, and they let me lay there. It was a couple of weeks, and then it started healing up on me. But then they told me, they said, one doctor said, you're going to go back up on the front lines. And another doctor said, nope, you lost a radial nerve in your arm. He said, you're going to go back to the States. So I just lay there, and then they come in and told me a couple of days later, something's wrong, you're bleeding, an awful lot of water is coming into the bandages from my wound. So he said, what could they say? They figured, well, it must have penetrated your bladder. And that's where you were getting water into my bandages. So they shipped me back to Taunton, England. Then they went up, we went up to Scotland. I'm going back to the States, they told me. Went up to Scotland. Yeah, Scotland, Ireland, or was it just Scotland? And then up to Iceland, Greenland, Newfoundland, then to LaGuardia Airport in New York, and from there I was shipped down to White Sulphur Springs, West Virginia. The Greenbrier Hotel was turned into a hospital. So they took me right up and put me in there, and they said, no, your bladder's healing up now, he said, but you're going to go back to you're going back to the States. So I laid there for a while down in West Virginia, and then he told me, you're getting discharged. So that was it.
Wow. Let's talk about, you mentioned that you were with the 1st Infantry Division.
Yeah.
You were with the 16th Infantry Regiment.
16th Regiment, 16th Infantry.
And what company were you in?
G Company. G Company of the 16th Infantry.
And what wave were you at Omaha Beach?
The first wave. We went in the first wave. Nothing there but a clear beach.
And the men that you mentioned when you were hit with the artillery, the men that you were with you, what did they live?
I don't know what happened. I know Sergeant Biggest, he was hit in the back. He was laying out up in front of me on the gravel pile, and I could see that he was bleeding on his back. It was bleeding. And the gunner was laying over there. I didn't remember what happened to him or the ammunition carriers, because the Navy picked me up and took me back out to the ocean.
And you were a rifleman? Was that your?
No, I was a assistant a gunner on 60 millimeter mortar.
And can you describe your wounds? You mentioned that you were hit in the back of the head. And,
yeah, I got a few shrapnel still on my head. They're small, but they cut some out, and the other ones, they said it's no use even cutting it because it is so small. So it's still, I still have a little bit of shrapnel in my head.
And so when you got off the boat, the Higgins, I assume you landed on a Higgins boat? The landing craft was a Higgins boat?
Yeah.
You weren't taking any fire when the ramp went down?
No.
So it wasn't until you got off into the beach a good
distance? Until we ran up past the beach, up past the obstacles, because the beach was long and it was a low tide, so they were, the obstacles weren't in the water yet. But after I got hit and I'm laying there, then I see all of the next waves coming up, and they're getting hung up on the obstacles. The water was, high tide was hitting my legs. My legs were getting wet until the sailors come up and picked me up.
How old were you at the time?
19.
It's hard for somebody like myself to comprehend what it's like to be at a battle as violent as Omaha Beach, especially at the age of 19. What's going through your head as this is unfolding around you?
I didn't think nothing. I don't remember thinking nothing. The only thing is I just laid there. And the sergeant, I started moaning and crying, and the sergeant said, "Shut up, it ain't gonna help you." So I kept quiet until they lifted me up and took me out on the ocean. And then brought me back, I don't know where, we shipped, landed someplace in England, and then they put me on the ambulance and went up to the hospital. I think it was Taunton, England. They had a general hospital there. And I laid there about 3 months in England.
Right before the invasion, when you were briefed about Omaha Beach, what was your understanding? Did you think that there would be a lot of resistance, or what were you briefed about as far as the invasion?
Nothing. They didn't tell. I don't remember them telling us nothing. They didn't even tell us what beach we were going on. Nothing. The sergeant knew, and I had a captain, was from Texas. What the hell was his name? He was a captain, and in the office, to get a promotion, he had to go and take a line company, be a captain of the line company. That's the way I understood it when I was in the hospital, and they were saying. So they promoted him to a major. No, he got promoted later on. He was a captain until after I was wounded, because after I was wounded, they got orders and they moved up already. The company next to us up to the right, no, to the left, got an opening, and they started going up onto the French land now. It was no more on the beach. They started going up. In the meantime, more troops were coming in and coming in and coming in. You look back, you threw a stone, you're going to hit somebody. There was so much, they couldn't get it up. But this outfit, they got an opening and they started going up. And that's when they started going up on the front lines. Captain Dawson was the captain of the company, and I understood that after that they promoted him to a major. Joe Dawson, yeah, that was his name.
How long were you on the beach before you were hit?
Not very long. Not very long.
Can you describe what it sounded like? The sound?
I thought I was an ant pressing into the gravel, to get away from the bomb, because the concussion would lift you. When the artillery was busting around you, the concussion would lift me.
Of the men that were in your unit, do you know how many of them didn't make it?
No, because I never came in contact with them after that. I was brought back to England, shipped on a C-47 up to Iceland, Greenland, Newfoundland, down into New York, and on in the C-47 down into West Virginia. I guess it was West Virginia. Greenbrier. I know they play a lot of golf there, and now they're opened up again, you know. That's all I could tell you that I can remember.
When you were approaching the Normandy coastline, can you describe what the sea looked like with the amount of ships that were involved with this?
Beautiful. With like a bunch of mosquitoes out there. They're all over the water, big ships and small ships, every kind. A Navy, what the hell would I say? As much as I know about the Navy, it was a mid-sized Navy gunboat. And they come up and they went in front of us. When we were coming from the beach, or to the beach, they come in front of us and they opened up with naval guns. But they overshot the targets. They pulled it up in front, and they were going shooting all along the target, but they were overshooting the German pillboxes. And the Germans, right after they went, the Germans opened up again with their artillery. They went right over, you know.
What about the Army Air Corps? How much support did you have from the Army Air Corps dropping their bombs?
No, they went too far in. They were going too far in, and they didn't help us. Not that day when I first got it. When I first got hit. When I sit here and talk about it, it was hell. But what you gonna do? Hey, all the other GIs were doing it. I had to do what they do. That's all.
At the time, did you realize the historic significance of the battle you were in?
No, I didn't. I didn't think nothing of it. I just listened to what the sergeant was preaching, but after he got hit, I had no control over what the Army did with me. That's what I had to do. No, I can't say I remember anything. I know I come home that's the first furlough or pass I ever had in the Army. None from when I completed my basic training. No, sir. When I completed my basic training, I got on a boat, and right there I went to Casablanca. Nothing. Like now they take them in, they put them in for 15 weeks, and then they send them home for a furlough. Not then. I guess they needed them, Dad. But I don't see where they had all those divisions. I'm not a military man, but I don't know. They were all around the country. Maybe they all organized them after. But they had to take the kids that just come in and take them in and put them on the front lines. You know, it wasn't that they had trained soldiers. I wouldn't say I was a trained soldier. Shit. I never fired a gun in my life. When I was a kid, my father was building a fence, and he put pipes for poles in them. And the neighbor gave me a cork gun. You ever get one of them guns that's like a rifle? You pump it like that, and it shoots a cork out. Makes a lot of noise, but don't do no damage. Oh boy, I went pop. I said, look at here, I got a gun. And my father said to me in Polish, show me. He took it like that, put it in that fence pole, put cement on top of it. That's your gun, no more. No, he said, I don't want no guns in my house, and that's all. Yeah.
You were you mentioned that you landed in Sicily.
Yeah.
But it was toward the end of the operation.
Yeah. Yeah.
Did you have a lot of soldiers that were in your unit that had combat experience elsewhere, such as Africa or?
No, just the rest of the company. The rest of the company. They come back from the front lines from Mount Etna in Sicily. That's where it ended, and they come back. So that's where they come back, and they started put us a bivouac in a lemon grove, and they put me in there and assigned me to the whatchamacall, and I'm laying there with my pack on, and I see the lemons. I grabbed a lemon from up there, and I said, that's the first time I ever ate a lemon. Yeah. Oh, Jesus Christ.
When you were in England before the invasion, what were your living conditions there? Were you with an English family, or were you at a camp?
We were in a Quonset. I get that Quonset huts. That's them black ones like that. That's where they had, I think, 2 companies. Was it 2 companies in this Quonset huts? 4 Quonset huts, and then near another town. They split them up. It's over there. Our company was in this camp, and E Company was in another camp. F Company and G Company were together. Our company and F Company were together. I know because they had a second lieutenant from the Air Force. He wanted out, so they took him from the Air Force, and they give him a lieutenant's rating in the front line troops. Lieutenant Blue, that was his name, Lieutenant Blue. Yeah.
How did you communicate with your family?
You write them a letter, but I don't know when they'd get it, you know.
You were in one of the most important battles of the Second World War.
Yeah.
When you got home, did you at that point did you realize the significance of what you did?
No. because the war was still going on. And nobody knew what was going to happen, you know what I mean? They started to get an awful lot of troops. They'd come over later on. They used to go to high school with me, some of them kids. And they were assigned, and that's when they said the hedgerows. When they got stuck in back of the hedgerows, they were just stuck there, that's all. They couldn't move. The Germans were on the other side of the hedgerow, these guys were on this side. Americans were on this side of the hedgerows. And a lot of them got killed up there because the Germans had everything ready in the hedgerows, you know. But nothing that I knew of much.
Can you describe when you were on the Higgins boat, what type of equipment were you personally carrying at that time?
I had my pack on my back and the plate from the 60 millimeter mortar. And the ammunition keeper, the gunner, he carried the gun. It was like a tube, you know. So, and he went up so far, and then Sergeant said, set the gun up. So he threw the plate down, and I put the gun right in it, and then opened it up, and he put the sights on it, because he carried the sights in a leather pack in here. And he started putting it on, and he started zeroing in, and then the sergeant bigger said, you better fire. So he gave him the number on it, and then set it over there, and he started firing. That's all. But it was no farther than that I got.
Was there any cover at all for you, or were you just out there in the open on the beach?
Yep, out in the open, no place. Nothing.
How much small arms fire were you taking?
Not too much. Not too much. The machine guns was firing, but you lay down and they miss you. But when your lieutenant started hollering, we're up and going, oh. So I know now Joe Dawson was in back of me where I was firing the mortar on the beach, and then when they started hollering from over in the other company, they said, come on over this way because we got an opening. So then all the ones that wasn't hurt, they started following over that way. But the ones that was wounded, they just stayed right here. But they were more troops coming in and coming in and coming in. You couldn't miss nothing. They were like mosquitoes, all the bunch.
Could you see from your vantage point clearly where the pillboxes were?
No, they were up on a hill. They were up on the hill, and they were opening. They had machine guns right in there, and they were firing like hell. I think right in front of the gravels was like a little bit of a swamp in there. And I don't know why our sergeant didn't tell us to run through it, but I think someone tried to run through it, and he got in, a mine hit him, and he got killed in the swamp. So then nobody else would go there. They tried to go around it.
What's the best way you could describe the battle scene? You said hell earlier. Any other words that you can use to help somebody understand what it was like to be on that beach?
Nope. The only thing I could tell you is that we had some older sergeants, very, very good sergeants. And they kept us in until it was dark. Then they'd move around, try to find a way to get up off the gravel. Yeah, they were. But them sergeants, they were better than the lieutenants leading the soldiers, you know. Yeah. Because them lieutenants, there was a big turnover of second lieutenants. There was a big turnover.
Today is the anniversary of DDay.
Yeah.
every anniversary, do you have a lot of memories that come back to you on the anniversary?
No. No, it's only that I come up here and start talking to you, and with my son, we start talking to the other guys out here that I figured it. But if I would have been home, I'd have been doing something in my garden or something, you know. Yeah.
You know, guys like most of the people that are here today think of you generally as a hero.
I know.
How do you react to that?
No, I don't think I'm a hero. I think I was just doing what the sergeants and the what you call was telling us to do. That's how I could tell them. They were running the show, the sergeants. I bumped into a guy after a while from down in North Carolina. His father used to have a car salesmanship down there. And he started telling me, I bumped into him already in a hospital in West Virginia. And he started telling me, he said, you know, I got hit going up by the hedgerows. He said, and Sergeant Grobar was a sergeant from Johnstown, Pennsylvania. He said, he was my sergeant. He said, when he seen me get hit, he pulled me off the hedges and he laid me on the ground around the hedges and covered me up. And he said to me, he said, now you just stay here till it gets dark. I'll come and bring you, I'll come and take you back. And he said, yeah. He said, Sergeant Grobar come, carried me right through in the dark, right back to American lines. Now, I never knew what happened to Grobar. Grobar was he was a sergeant, a buck sergeant. And he said he didn't give a bullshit about the war. He didn't give a shit about nothing. When we were in town, he'd go and get drunk every time. He'd get drunk and they'd take him home, back to the barracks, and he'd sleep it off. But when they come under action, he knew what to do. He wasn't scared, no sir. And he wasn't a big man, just a small, thin man, but he led the troops. He did. I often wondered, I wanted to go over to France to see. I didn't know that all my sergeants, biggest, the gunners, the ammunition carriers, they all got hit. I don't think so. I don't remember. But I never come in contact with any of them no more.
How would you describe your homecoming?
Not much. Not much. Not much at all. I come home, the war was still on. Because World War II ended about 2 weeks after I got my military discharge. And my mother didn't have nothing about it because she lost 3 brothers in the German army in the First World War. She always used to cry and say, they took 2 of my brothers, her brothers, and one was saying to his father, and he said, don't worry, Dad. He said, I'm going because they were going to conscript his horses. They were taking the horses to use in the First World War in the Army. And he said, I'll go with the horses, and when the war ends, I'll bring the horses home. But it never happened. They went into Hungary or someplace over there, and he got killed. And they took the horses, and that was the end of him. I know she used to cry all the time. He was the youngest brother.
How how do you think that your experience during the war affected your life?
Well, it made me a little older to know what's going on in the world. I knew I'd come home, and I didn't know what the hell to do with myself already. I had a contraption put on my hand with wires and rubber bands, and I was supposed to exercise it like I'd pull it down, and the rubber bands would pull it up until I get the nerves working in my hand, you know. And then I used to go up to the restaurant where I worked behind the soda fountain, and there was 2 doors away was a jewelry store, and I think they took a liking to me, the old Jewish man that run it. And he come in and he said to me, he said, "Mike, what are you doing? What are you going to do now?" I said, "I don't know what to do." I said, "I don't know what could I do?" He said, "Go to school to be a watch repairman." And I said, "You think I could do it with my hand the way it is?" He said, "If you could hold a quarter in between your 2 fingers, you could do it." He said, "I'll get you an application when the Bull of a Watch salesman comes in. I'll get you the papers, you fill them out and send them in." And that's when I got accepted into the Bull of a Watch company to fix watches. They had a school out in New York, and you had to be a disabled veteran to get in it. Yeah.
This video will be sent to the Library of Congress.
It will?
Yes, it will. Yeah. And it should be kept there for hundreds and hundreds of years. If one of your great-great-great-great-grandchildren saw the video, what would you want them to know about your service?
I don't know how they're going to form their opinion. Whether they form their opinion that they like their parents or what, you know. All depends on how the world is turning in the future. That's the only thing I could figure. Yeah, I worked for 20 years fixing watches. I knew I had no trouble. Then the owner of the jewelry store closed down, so I was out of work. I went up on a 5220 club. You get for $20 for 52 weeks. Then I'd go collect the $52, or no, $20 for 52 weeks. And that's how I was hanging around the VFW and that. And then I found out that the other guys, it's like now they're saying, "Oh, you get shell shocked, they get nervous." Now, it's not. It's something that you get in from the battle all around you, that you get strung up tight. And that's what happened to them guys. They get strung up tight, and they'd go up to vets, and they'd sit there drinking until they get shined all up. And here it was 11 o'clock at night, the bartender wants to close the club, so you'd get out and they'd walk across the street, and that was the main highway. And 1 or 2 of them got killed. And I figured, oh, that's what it was. And now they say, oh, that's shell shock, or that's other fancy words they use for it. But I don't know I don't think so, that so many guys are coming from Afghanistan and Iraq and that, and they're saying tension. I don't think so. I'm not a medical man, but that's the way I feel it. I figured if them guys would just drink a few and go home and go to bed, and it would wear off over the years. You know, you'd wear it off and you'd get back to normal. But if you're going to be going and drinking all the time, you'll never get normal. Yeah.
If a young man came to you today and asked you for your advice about entering into the Army, what would you tell him?
I would tell him not to go. I would tell him not to go. I had a neighbor, and I agree with you. But let me tell you, I agree with it. He got out of high school, and I said to him, "Where are you going to go? You want to go to college? You want to go to school?" No, he said, "I'm going in the military." His father wasn't in the military. His grandfather wasn't in the military, but he wanted to go, so he went in the military. He come home. I said, "Well, how'd you do, Glenn?" "Good," he said. "Mike," he said, "I volunteered for the paratroopers." He said, "I loved it." I said, "Well, did they send you over to Afghanistan or Iraq?" "No." He said, "They sent me to Germany." "I didn't know we were in Germany," he said, "and we had to practice jumping out of an airplane in Germany." He served his term in there, and he come out and he's home. Yeah, you don't know what's going to be. No.
Is there anything else you wanted to talk about your time in the Army?
No. Not that I could think of. But you know, with that, it is, when you think about it, you see some people, they go in the Army, they're a bunch of miserable bastards. And some of them, I could say they're more intelligent, and they're nice. You get to be buddy with them, you have it good. That's all I could tell you. Yeah.
Well, on behalf of the Americans in Wartime Museum, and personally, I cannot thank you enough for coming here and telling us this story. I can tell you this is probably one of the most fascinating stories we've heard.
Yeah.
Your service, I can't thank you enough for it. It's been an honor to meet you.
Yeah. Well, you people are nice. I didn't know what it was all about, but I would tell it to you like I'd tell it to anybody else on the street. That's all.
Thank you so much.
Okay.
It's an honor.
Right.